event.
Running anti-5. Dealer, shuffle up and deal.
Shuffle up and deal, indeed. We are down to 4 players.
Oh, thank you.
Now, a different dynamic today than yesterday is the fact that there is a live stream and that these players did not agree, like they did yesterday, to not find out what their players were playing. So, for Fabrice and for Dominique, they now know that this man, our chip leader, is 3-betting with hands like 9-8. I'm sure they suspect it, but now it's confirmed. Having that knowledge, how will that affect the game going forward?
Well, it might mean that we'll see a little more pre-flop action. It could mean that we see some of these other players as Mateos maybe keeps on the pressure as he gets a more relative advantage of a lead, but they might start finding some riskier spots to fight back.
McLean Carr joining me in the booth once again. I'm David Tuchman, and this is the 7th annual World Series of Poker Europe. This is the main event down to final 4. We came back today with 6 players. Benny Spindler started this final table driving about 300 miles an hour.
It's gotten faster every time we've talked about it. I like that. It's like
32 hands later, he found himself out in 6th place. He finished 6th in the APAC main event. He came into that final table as the chip leader, finished in 6th, and played a very similar style. Didn't work for him there either. He took home 126,000 euros. Ravi Raghavan, the 27-year-old, had a straight flush draw, royal straight flush draw.
Yes.
Did not complete and lost to Adrian Mateos' 2-pair and was gone in 5th place, and that leaves us with 4. This is one of them. 2 of these players have bracelets, the 2 guys that are on your screen, Dominic Nietzsche and Fabrice Soulier. Both those players have won a World Series of Poker bracelet before. Our chip leader and our short stack, Mateos, the 19-year-old Spaniard, looking for his first bracelet, and Jerome Huget, the Frenchman, 38-year-old amateur, looking for their first ever World Series of Poker bracelet. And there's a look at the amateur 38-year-old, married with a kid, apparently turned a 10-euro satellite into a seat at the World Series of Poker Europe main event.
Yeah.
10 euros, and he's now turned that into 250,000 euros.
At least.
I have, exactly, at minimum. I am not going to even try to guess what his financial situation is. I have no idea. That said, I don't know many people that wouldn't be happy turning 10 euros into 250,000 euros.
Yeah, of course. Where are you going to find an investment where you can do that? It's incredible. It's a dream come true. And an investment that is so much fun to realize as well.
This is he's having the time of his life. I mean, every time he wins a pot, you see a big smile on his face.
Oh yeah,
he's having a lot of fun.
I think he might have the best smile in all the little icons by the cards too.
Yeah,
and he's got a nice big cheesy fromage grin from our Frenchman.
And there's a look at the amateur, Huget. If you're just joining us, by the way, the blue placard chips that you'll see on the table, those are worth 100,000. The red chips are 25,000. Gray chips are 5,000. We've colored off the 1Ks as the blinds now are 15,000, 30,000.
And they've just introduced the big yellow placards. It looks like the next level.
65.
Adrian raised to 65.
7 folds. 3 folds.
Those are probably a quarter or 500,000.
Mateos gets the check mark.
But they definitely look cool, and that's the important part. When you're gambling
classy
in Europe and you've got the plaques, nothing feels cooler than when you get to the point in the tournament where they change the shape of the chip and they bring out these big plaques, and you've seen them before in James Bond movies, and it just oozes class.
If you made a final table at the World Series of Poker Europe main event, would you wear a tux?
Oh wow, probably not, but I wouldn't be opposed to the idea. I like dressing up from time to time. I think it would be cool if you could get all of the players. And it might be easier at a high roller where you know the players. to maybe have them all agree to not look at each other's hole cards, but also agree to wear tuxes.
Yeah, if you saw the group of players that made the high roller yesterday, I think you'd be hard pressed to get any of those players to wear a tux.
Yeah, that'd be tough. Unless
Can you imagine Scott Seaver asking Scott Seaver to wear a tux?
I mean, I'm sure he's probably worn nice clothes like that. You know, he's old enough now to wear.
Playing poker?
Well, probably not while playing poker, but I'm sure he's worn a tux before.
Mateos, the original raiser. Huget, 3-bet to 150,000. Small blind. Fabrice gets rid of it. Dominique folds the big blind, and it's back over to Mateos.
It would be interesting, David, if maybe there was a slow tightening up of the dress code in poker for televised events or final tables or even any sort of open event, to where maybe it classes it up a bit, and you could have some events just like at Wimbledon. You have to wear all white. Maybe at the World Series of Poker Europe, you would have a certain dress code that would be for at least for this tournament.
Huget, this is the 4th time Huget has 3-bet.
350.
2 of those times he had the hand. 1 time he did not. Mateos going to put Huget to the test.
Yeah, Mateos loves having all these chips, and he's been doing a good job of putting pressure on the other players. And he did see Huget fold earlier to a re-raise when Ravi did it, so he knows he's capable.
At this point, Mateos might know that Huget actually 3-bet with ace-3 and then folded the ace-3.
That's very, very possible. He probably does. And it also might be possible that Huget is at a disadvantage here where he might not be communicating with someone about all the hands.
Well, he is actually going to 4-bet this.
700.
He makes it 700.
And I think he's so strong here.
Adrian folds.
Yeah, okay, there's the aces, yeah.
The yellow placard, by the way, is 500,000 chips.
Okay. And he kind of, I think when he raised that one, he definitely gave away the strength of his hand, showing some of his... I don't know. I don't want to give too much away talking on the live stream, but I definitely think that he kind of overacted that one a little bit when he did his raise.
It's funny occasionally to look at a tweet asking, you know, I'm new to playing live poker. What's the best way to conceal, you know, when I have strength or if I'm bluffing? And I always try to tell people, and I hear this from other pros, don't act. Just try not to act. Just the more you try to conceal, the worse you probably are.
Right, and what some people don't realize is that when you are clearly acting, that kind of polarizes what you have. Because there are certain times when people will play certain ways where they don't feel the need to act.
Good point. By the way, we mentioned Fabrice. You've mentioned that he looks like a movie star. Well, he's not a movie star, and he may not have been a movie star, but he was a TV director in France before poker.
Oh, interesting. So, yeah, I know it because he's got a good eye for fashion.
He's got that Hollywood flair.
He's got that sort of aesthetic awareness. I think he should be involved more in movies or TV, maybe.
Mateos raises. Nietzsche calls. Walter from Twitter wants to know how many blinds deep the players are right now. Well, there's about 11 million chips in play. Blinds are 15,000, 30,000, so you can see that Soulier is about 70 big blinds deep. Huget, about 60 big blinds deep.
Yeah, 63 almost. So everyone has chips at this
Dominic
point.
Nietzsche is about 80 big blinds deep, and Mateos is, well, just well over 100 big blinds deep.
Right, so
our short stack has 60 big blinds.
Exactly, which leaves a lot of room for a lot of poker, unless we see another 2 big hands like a 2-pair and monster draw getting together, set over set, 2-pair over 2-pair, these types of things. It's probably unlikely that we're going to see a huge all-in until someone gets whittled down a little bit shorter.
Just to refresh the action, Mateos raised, Nietzsche called. Actually, Nietzsche limped in from the small blind. Mateos raised from the big blind. Nietzsche called. It went check, bet, call. And once again, Dominic checks the turn. Mateos bets, this time 240,000 into 360. So pot is 600,000 chips. More than 5% of the chips in play in this pot already. And Dominic Nietzsche, the German, facing a 240,000 chip bet,
Dominic fold.
and he gives it up.
And
And the Dominic stare. So Dominic had a hand. I mean, Dominic limped in and just called the raise with ace-10 and kind of played the hand from behind. He got out flopped.
Right.
And a great turn card for Mateos as well.
Looks like Dominic feels strong about his post-flop skills, and he doesn't want to play two huge pots out of position and maybe sacrifice his second place chips right now, because he knows that
Or two huge A.
yeah.
Big pots.
Well, yeah, exactly. So he's trying to play cautiously against the chip leader, and probably rightfully so at this stage in the tournament.
We saw that Ravi Raghavan, a 27-year-old from the University of Illinois, was gone in 5th place. And there's some conjecture. I was wondering where Mohsen Sharania was, and maybe he'd join us in the booth. Apparently, we were wondering if maybe he was charming some girl atop the Eiffel Tower, but apparently he is not. He is playing the WPT main event. Well, it's already, I think they're probably already in like level 2 or level 3. He's probably out by now.
I find that doubtful. Mo finds a way to stick around usually. He's a fantastic player.
Mateos raises to 75,000. Once again, the blinds are 1530. Mateos raising it to 2.5x from the small blinds. And you see that a lot. You see a lot of guys actually raising it a little bit more from the small blind because they know they have to play the hand out of position.
Right.
Huget stepping up the aggression level. He is now 3-betting again.
And it's a little bit easier for Huget maybe if he picks up even a medium strength hand here to have a little more confidence in it, because Mateo has been putting on a lot of pressure.
I think Huget's confidence has grown exponentially ever since he made that call with the ace-7.
Yeah, that was a big confidence builder for him too. I agree.
4-bet from Mateos.
And it's called
And a call.
Snap call.
And this is how this tournament could end actually relatively quickly. We get a 4-bet and a call. The pot is already 940,000.
Yeah, it's a huge pot. If Huget connects here, we're probably going to see him going with his hand.
I mean, yeah, if Huget's got, if it's a king-queen versus an ace-king type situation,
right,
it's going to be very, very tough for Huget to get away from.
Although I think oftentimes Huget might have raised with smaller pairs here and might be a little afraid of the king and not sure what to do.
Well, those red chips are 25k. Small bet for Mateos.
275.
This is something pros love to do. It's something amateurs don't do. The bet on the flop is actually smaller than the pre-flop raise.
Right. And this is something that's important to consider, because Mateos doesn't need to risk a lot of chips right now in order to put his opponent in a really tough position because of the large size of the pot. Huget only started the hand with 1.8, and so he doesn't have a lot of chips in ratio to the large size of the pot out there. So now if he's going to raise, he has to commit a significant portion of his stack, and he's probably going to have to go with it. So it really kind of puts him in a bind.
He's got a little bit over 1 million chips in front of him still. The players and their chip counts on top of the screen, those are their starting hand chip counts. So
now Huget is basically, with this small amount that Mateos is putting out there, if he's going to commit 27.5% or whatever it is of his remaining stack, a quarter of his remaining stack, then he's probably should be going with the hand.
What do you do if you're Huget and you've got 2 red 9s? What do you do?
I re-raise back all in pre-flop.
Okay. So you wouldn't find yourself. But okay, what if you have 2 red 7s? Would you still play it the same way?
Probably against Mateos.
Just because you're not going to. The problem is with 7s and 9s, there aren't that many flops you're going to like.
Yeah, but if I do flat with him, you could still go with the hand if you think that Mateos was raising pre-flop with an ace-jack, ace-9, some kind of ace like that.
So you just stick it in with 9s and hope your opponent doesn't have an overpair?
Well, that's basically what you're saying you should do if you're flatting with 9s and waiting for this board. Otherwise, you think your 9s are good and you go with it. If he's set mining, basically, and hoping to get 3 of a kind in order to continue with his hand, then he should have folded pre-flop.
Right.
Which is why it's not a great flat spot. It's an either shove or fold.
Huget has been tanking for 2 minutes, and Last night we had very, very little tanking. Even today we haven't had a ton. So while I think it's been an epidemic lately in the poker world, it certainly hasn't been at either one of these final tables. I think this is the longest tank, and I don't blame it. I think Huget actually does have one of those medium pairs like you called it, and it's a tough spot, and he's going to give it up. Let's see what he's got.
Oh, no, he had the ace-jack. Wow, okay, well.
Both players in the same hand.
Still a tough spot.
So deuce. Yeah, of course you did.
And they both had backdoor draws.
In which case, if Huget had gone all in, Mateos might have still called with the amount of money he put out there, but he could have still found a fold, too, because Huget isn't re-raising all in with an ace-jack. He's presumably only re-raising all in with hands that have ace-jack beat.
Mateos now up to 5.5 million chips. He now has about 49% of the chips in play.
Yeah.
Huget down to 1.4 million.
And Mateos is doing a good job slowly whittling away these stacks, and he's going to try to get them to play against each other for the pay jumps while they all pretty much concede the fact that he is going to be in the top spot. That is his goal at this point.
I overstated it. I said 49%. He actually has 48.9%.
Oh, wow.
I was off by 0.1%.
Yeah.
By the way, I did the math on the fly, so.
It's all right. You know, maybe next year you'll work a little during the off season.
I'll step it up.
7. That's a very specific reason.
7th Annual World Series of Poker Europe. McLean Carr has won a WPT event. He's won 4 high rollers across the world. He's made a couple of World Series of Poker final tables, and he's here offering his expertise in the booth with me, David Tuchman. As always, we like to keep the show interactive, so you can send your tweets in at WSOP, at Tuck on Sports. Mateos raising on the button. Mateos takes it.
For the rest of the day.
Now you wonder if the other pros at the table, Dominic and Fabrice, are they waiting for Huget to get knocked out now? I mean, because there's, I mean, the pay jumps now are fairly significant. It's 149,000 euro difference between fourth and third.
Well, and this is one of those situations where I don't think there is all yes or all no answer, because with poker players, it's always a percentage of this or a percentage of that. So yes, they probably don't want to make a catastrophic error while they feel they have an edge over this other player that's likely to go out before them. And so they're probably going to be playing without trying to press the action to where they might give up that pay jump. So yes, I think they will be playing a little closer to the vest.
I mean, in a weird way, it's like playing that, playing the one table satellite where they pay 3 spots, and you know, if you've got a ton of chips, you can just put so much pressure on those medium stacks. So by the time it gets heads up or 3 ways, Mateos could theoretically have 60 to 65% of the chips in play.
Right. Yes, and that's ideally the situation he's trying to put himself in.
We saw that last summer, event number 2 of the World Series of Poker. Trevor Pope did that, where he came to the final table, pretty stacked final table, by the way, and he came to the final table with 50% of the chips in play.
Right.
It was just tremendous, and nobody had, I mean, the second place.
It's so much fun to be in that scenario.
And he just
I
crushed.
gotta tell you, it's so much fun.
Absolutely crushed, and David Van Plu came in 2nd place. Daniel Kelly was at that final table. And Trevor Pope just put on an absolute show. A lot of fun. Huget raising and taking that one down. And
making sure he shows the hand to the cameras. Showing that he had the bluff there. He wanted to make sure that one made the camera, but he was bluffing with the best hand.
I don't think he thought, though.
No, but it's still interesting to see. You know, he's still willing to play around a little bit, and even though he just kind of got stung with that ace-jack and had to lose a significant portion of his stack pre-flop, he's in there in the same orbit, bluffing.
Nobody gets this far in a tournament of this magnitude without occasionally bluffing.
I don't know. Every once in a while you see an Alan Kessler or Tony Cousineau at a final table, so it does happen.
Even Dan Harrington will occasionally pull the 4-bet, the cold 4-bet bluff, or the 3-bet squeeze, because he knows his image is so great. And I imagine even the chainsaw, Alan Kessler, must do it occasionally, right?
I mean, in theory. In theory, he does. But
last time Alan Kessler bluffed was 2007.
Yeah. No, I'm sure these players bluff too. They just, and it's all part of the game, because sometimes you're going to be in scenarios, and really that's your only conceivable way to win a given pot, and it is your best option.
As a professional, I think it's a great trait to have that gumption, the chutzpah, as you said, to try to win every pot. Okay, how can I win this? Try to really think of a way. How can I win this pot? But is there also something to be said for, you know, just realizing that you don't have to win every single pot and going, you know what, I'm going to live to fight a better day.
Well,
another day, I should say.
Yeah, the best poker players find that horizon, and the horizon's always moving between chip accumulating and chip maintaining. So you have your accumulators who are always trying to win every pot and build up a stack, and you have people who are always trying to survive and maintain their stack. And given the action at your table, stage of the tournament, there's probably a certain ratio of maintaining and protecting and slowly padding or reducing your losses. Interesting river here.
Yeah, this was Fabrice raised pre-flop. He put a continuation bet out there. Mateos called it, went check on the flop, and it doesn't check
probably
down.
has a decent spade. No, he has two pair. Well, almost the same. But not enough to win to the better two pair of Fabrice.
So Mateos checks back the two pair on the turn.
Probably because he figured that if Fabrice had any spade, he's probably going to call. It's hard to bluff Fabrice off in this position.
And you don't want to, I mean, can you bet for value?
Well,
can you get value from an ace with a, let's say for example your opponent's got ace X and the X is a spade.
It's tough to get value there, and he doesn't, it's so thin that because he has the two pair, he just doesn't need to. He doesn't need to. He just wins it so often. He might be trying to play it as a bluff catch instead, hoping that Fabrice...
Check it back to induce?
Yeah, because maybe if Fabrice had the big spades, he would have played the hand more aggressively earlier. So it's not likely he has a really strong spade. So maybe Fabrice even merges and bets a mid-spade and gives Mateos a chance to maybe take it away with turning his hand into a bluff.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, if Fabrice does bet the turn there and gets check raised, he hates life.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes that's the best way to play when you have these sort of hands that have some showdown value and your opponent doesn't have the nuts very often, is that you either let it get the showdown or you give your opponent a chance to create a scenario to
The only thing I caution against, and I'm curious of your take, is if you're not betting two pair on that board, when the turn is a spade, when you do bet the turn, when you do double barrel, are you too polarized? I mean, are you basically just betting? You're betting what?
You're for sure polarized. That's why you're not betting the two pair on the turn. So basically, you're saying on the turn, I'm going to be betting the nuts, maybe that being a set to the flush, or the really big draw, or air.
I guess my point is, though, is since you're going to have a lot more bluffs in your range than you will the nuts.
Yeah.
Does that? I guess it goes back to balancing, and I guess it's overrated in tournaments. But I'm wondering if you're not betting two pair there and you're only betting the nuts or bluffs, well, then your opponent can call you a lot easier on the turn because, well, you're probably bluffing.
Well, and depending on what they have as well. But I think a lot of pros with one pair and two pair hands on that board texture are checking the turns in a lot of scenarios. And one of the other reasons is because it's really easy for someone without a made hand who has a big draw to either fold out your equity, or it's really easy for someone to get in really good against you then, because they can also have you just crushed.
And the river is 10 of hearts.
10 pairs. Now, this was on a 10-9-6 board. Huget checked. Nietzsche bet 75,000. Huget raised. Then it went check, check. Now, earlier on, there was a min check raise by Huget when he had a pair of jacks on an ace-high board. He also did it with jack-9 on a jack-high board. So, wouldn't be surprising at all if Huget had tripped 10s right here, or had a pair of 10s, was scared by the diamond, and now has tripped 10s.
Put that a small bet.
So around bet 125.
Well, I mean, I think clearly he's scared of the diamonds.
And it's called by Dominic.
Yep.
And usually at ace-9.
Ace-9, okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he was betting with he was
Betting for
raising
value there, yeah.
Well, and he was raising with on the flop, kind of like, let me see where I'm at type raise.
Right. And he thought he might have the best hand and just wanted to take it down out of position. There's a lot of bad cards that can come, Broadway cards that are flatting there.
The
King,
bet on the
queen,
river.
Jack.
Bet on the river a little bit too thin though. Hard to get called by worse, isn't it? When the diamond comes in the turn after you check raise?
Maybe, but then when the 10 also comes, then you think, oh, it's much less likely. He has a 10. I can have a better 9. Maybe he's calling with a pair of 8s or a pair of 7s.
I wonder if Dominic calls with a weaker 9.
Yeah, but once again, I don't know this player so well. I don't know how deeply he's going into the poker analysis. He might think I have second pair with an ace kicker, and it's not likely he has a 10. It's a good spot to bet.
He might also be thinking, I don't know what to do if I check and my opponent bets, so I'm going to bet.
That could very well be the case.
Blinds are 15-30. McLean Carr, David Tuckman in the booth. There's our chip leader, Adrian Mateos, the 19-year-old Spaniard, looking for his first ever World Series of Poker bracelet. And what a way to do it if he can do it at the World Series of Poker Europe main event.
That's arriving in style.
Some people arrive in a regular plane. Some people arrive by car. He's coming in by jet.
Right. They've revived the Concorde.
Mateos with just under half the chips in play as we play four-handed here inside the theater at the Casino Barriere.
And Huget's been whittled down as we kind of anticipated would be the case.
65.
And he still has a decent amount of chips, but another pot or two, and he's going to start probably getting nervous.
Yeah, he's still got 40 big blinds. I want to give him credit because there are a lot of amateurs that would play at this, in this circumstance, with the cameras and the lights on them and playing against world-class players for just ridiculous amounts of money that would whittle under the pressure and almost get into a shell and not play too many hands. Huget is not doing that. He's playing hands. He's 3-betting. He's mixing it up a little bit. We saw that with the ace-9, check raising with second pair. And it's one of those things where if he goes down, he's going to go down fighting.
Oh, yeah. And his hand selection has been pretty decent. He's not getting too carried away, but he has opened up his game, I think, a little bit more as the players have gone out, correctly so, and here he is raising again.
And you wonder how much experience he has playing. You mentioned it earlier. It's one thing to play a lot of tournaments. You might have tournament experience, but how much experience do you have closing the deal?
Right.
How much experience do you have playing? If you only play full-range tournaments, you might play 9-handed, 8-handed, or 7-handed the entire tournament. You don't get that much experience playing 4-handed poker.
Absolutely. Online poker here in France is pretty popular. It is conceivable that he's played some online poker and has some experience. It's clear that it's not his first tournament.
No, definitely not.
He, like we say, he's been making some decent decisions. He's putting up a good fight, and they keep testing him. And here's Soulier.
Fabrice Soulier has 3-bet, but it looks like our chip leader is going to 4-bet.
And this is a good spot for Mateos. He might think that people are starting to pick on Huget a little more. And now Soulier has to decide if he's going to keep fighting or give up.
I love that you mentioned it. It's a great dynamic. I think Fabrice Soulier he hasn't played a hand. He hasn't played that many hands since we came back from break. He probably feels like, okay, I've built up this image. Let me pick on the amateur. He's been bleeding off some chips. I can also play, if he calls me, I get to play the hand in position.
Right.
All those factors into the fact that there's a good chance that Fabrice doesn't have a strong hand here. Could he? Of course he could.
Right. And so it's a good spot for Mateos regardless. And we even saw Fabrice earlier might have made a misstep pre-flop with the ace-jack. So he's made some mistakes pre-flop.
Man, I love this stuff.
So it's a good spot for Mateos. It was a good spot for Fabrice. Clearly Fabrice was onto something. Huget got rid of his hands pretty quickly. So he didn't have a premium holding.
Now we go to the next level. If Fabrice knows all the stuff that you just said, which clearly he does, and he knows that it's a good spot for Mateos to 4-bet, well then, could it theoretically be a good spot to 5-bet?
It could be, but then once again, he's in position here, and it's another tiny little raise.
Not really.
And once again, he loses with the similar holding. That's a tough spot.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, clearly Mateos, you know, he...
Great spot by the young Spaniard.
Yeah, and he just, you know, he figured out everything that you said. And this is what I love about my job. And this is what I love about watching poker and doing poker commentary and watching these shows is well before we could see what the hand is. And even if Fabrice actually picked up a big hand there or not, we try not to be results-oriented. That was a great spot for a 4-bet.
Oh, yeah.
And Mateos picked it up. He saw it.
Yep, classic spot.
And he puts the pressure on the rest of the players, and he now has over half the chips in play.
Yeah.
And even more so, going off of the pay jumps,
Jerome is on the big
the fact that
blind.
Fabrice has about 2 million chips, the chip leader can really put pressure on those medium
Which is
stacks.
why, for so many reasons, it's a good play. The class, you're exploiting the guy who's exploiting someone on the next level thinking. You have the chips, you have the pay jumps, you have all these factors working in your corner to help make your play successful. And you got to hand it to the young 19-year-old from Spain for finding the good spots to keep the pressure on.
Would have been pretty sick. I mean, it looked like Fabrice, it looked like his instincts were telling him that this is a good spot. I should probably, but you know what? He couldn't pull the trigger, and you know, there's a lot of money.
And he's still so deep. It's hard for him to re-raise all in there. It's tough for him to continue without hitting the board really hard and risking getting knocked out before Huget.
And you just hate life if you 5-bet. If he 5-bets to say, you know, 850.
Well, right. That's
like,
why the stack sizes weren't great for him to. So I think it's fine for him to fold there. You just gotta hand it to Mateo for playing great poker.
Continuation bet from Fabrice. Action back on Huget, who had defended from the blind.
And Huget is probably not defending from the blind with anything here. So now that he's continuing, he probably has at least, you know, a decent draw or at least a decent pair of queens. He could even have a king-queen.
I would think the worst hand he has here is like a queen-8 suited.
Even that he might have folded pre-flop, although he could be getting a little frustrated now that he feels the sharks are circling.
Yeah, and he called earlier with Jack-8 suited.
Okay, but he was deeper then, too.
Oh, well, I don't know. Maybe a little bit deeper. I would say the worst hand, the bottom of his range, would be that.
200,000.
So he's leading now. So he's playing it like he has a king-queen or a jack-10.
Well, I mean, would he take one off with the gut shot to Broadway? I mean, if he had a jack-10 of diamonds, he certainly would.
He might. He might. I don't know if it's as likely. But the king-queen was my first initial guess. Now Fabrice has to wonder if he has a chance to hang around, if he has enough equity to get better on the river, or if he has them already.
Well, Fabrice is going to call. Pot is now 715,000 chips. More than 5% of the chips in play are in here once again. A big pot developing.
So Fabrice at least has a pair in the straight draw, probably calling.
The river shouldn't change anything. I mean, sometimes it's hard to kind of suss out where the amateur's at, because I've seen players take really unconventional lines where they flop a monster, yet they don't want to check raise because they're like, oh, I don't want to blow them off it.
Right.
But then they worry.
And then they get a scare card, like if he had pocket threes, for instance. And now all of a sudden, oh my goodness, it's almost a flush, it's almost a straight. What if the guy checks and he gets there? What am I going to do?
I've seen that, you know, where it's like, oh, I don't want to check raise with it, so I do this. I mean, is there any way that Huget had Queen X of diamonds and made that bet picking up diamonds? Like Queen 9 of diamonds.
It's possible. I don't think it's
all in.
Jerome bets all in.
He's all in for 780,000.
No snap call from Soulier, so he was not slow playing a Jack-10, obviously. Now he probably has. I was guessing he was around an Ace-9 or an Ace-10.
Well, at this point, Ace-9 or Ace-10 is just a bluff catcher.
Right, and I thought that Ace-10's a little more likely because he might have been hoping for having at least a few more outs with the Jack.
I'm going to tell you, if Huget has like Queen 9 of diamonds,
And Jerome is all in for 780.
he's such a boss.
That would be a strong play. I would think that's a little less likely. I would figure him for
I don't think he has
king,
that either, but
a king-queen or
pocket
pocket threes are probably
Il a
more
780
likely,
000.
which are roughly the same hand.
well, at this point, for sure, they're the same
Right.
hand. I mean, it's clear Fabrice, the best hand Fabrice has right now is ace-9 or ace-10.
Right. It is possible he had a jack-10 of spades too, or something.
I'll
like
tell you
that,
from this
but,
angle.
I think he would have check-raised that and not let out again.
It's called by
He calls.
Fabrice. Can you show
Ace-queen.
them?
Wow, UJ with the huge bluff. Oh my goodness.
Ace-queen for Fabrice.
We're losing Jerome on the fourth place.
Kind of a blow up from UJ there. Soulier took a long time to make that call. I guess if you are up against threes or the jack-10, you could lose. But I have a hard time folding ace-queen there.
Nah, ace-queen you can't.
I think it's almost borderline slow roll.
It's a little, well, I wouldn't say slow roll, but a little bit of a nit roll.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a fine line between the slow roll
I
and
knew
nit roll.
it was very polarized. I mean, he could have threes, he could have...
Let's hear him, let's
He's
hear
so
him.
polarized every time, right? It's like,
Do you guys want to look at numbers at all? Or?
Well,
I don't think we can do anything.
Not officially.
I think because your opponent, because UJ could have king-queen there, I think you have to call ace-queen every time.
Yeah,
I think because now,
and he could even have an ace-3. He could have had, you know, an ace-8 maybe, and started getting scared. He has a lot of other hands that you could potentially be ahead
I know
of.
I'm going to call.
I don't like the defending with the 4-3 out of the small blind, out of position with the short stack. And he played it in a way that could have maybe folded out some better hands. Unfortunately, he was up against a very strong two-pair and a good player.
Jerome Huget, well, I had a feeling this guy was going to go down fighting, and he went down fighting. You know, he puts Fabrice Soulier to the test with 4-3 of clubs.
It was heroic. It was very heroic for him. He took a very strong line, leading the turn and then going all in on the river. You have to give it to the Frenchman, the amateur, for having the chutzpah, as we keep on saying, to really go for it on the river there. He's got to be happy with his result, despite this last hand.
We are apparently going to take an unscheduled break. Jerome Huget, out in fourth place, earns himself 251,000 euros. Just a reminder, he won a satellite to get into this, so he is literally up about 250,000 euros. Not a bad payday at all for Jerome Huget.
To say the least.
Yeah, to say the least. These players are going to go on an unscheduled 5-minute break. We will as well. Be right back. But before we do, we'll look at the payouts. Jerome Huget takes home 251,000 euros, and we did not see Shannon Shore or Andre Konopalko get knocked out. These players, the three players, still playing for 1 million euros up top. Once again, we will leave you with more coverage of last year's main event. Back in about, we've been here for the last 2 weeks, and we'll be here for a few more hours until we crown a champion of the World Series of Poker Europe main event. It'll be one of these three players. Will it be Fabrice Soulier, the Frenchman, Dominic Nietzsche, the German, or the 19-year-old Spaniard, the chip leader, Adrian Mateos? One of those players will take home 1 million euros and that shiny gold bracelet that every poker player in the world wants. There's a look at the 19-year-old Spaniard, Mateos. And as I mentioned, the payouts, the 1 million euros up top.
They just ran such a big flop.
Looks like they've spaced
Second
out
place,
a little bit.
610,000 euros. Third place, 400,000 euros. So still a significant amount of money. And one thing that I've been so aware of the last couple of years, I think a lot of guys go, wow, now it's so much money, who cares? You don't realize that the difference between third and second is so significant. That's more than a lot of first places in a lot of tournaments.
Oh yeah, it's big time, and it's in euros too. So for those watching from back in the good old US of A,
that's over $300,000
right.
difference between third and second.
Yeah, well, it's big. It's big.
Isn't it like 1.38 or something?
It's 1.36, I think, is about
something along those lines. If you want, though, we are an expert on Mexico. We'll get into the peso to the euro. What's that? Come on.
Peso to the euro. I couldn't tell you. I don't know.
Come on, McLean.
Well, the inflation rate, the peso is so volatile. How can I be expected to know what it is today?
McLean Carr, David Tuckman here for the 7th Annual World Series of Poker Europe. We're three-handed.
Yep.
No, I have less than that.
Fabrice Soulier,
I have 3.1.
Dominic Nietzsche,
2.5,
How come?
5.5.
and Adrian Mateos. They've given themselves a little bit of space.
Yeah, which is, I think, going to add to Mateos' equity. He's not going to have Dom staring at him point blank as much when they're in hands.
Actually, we can move to left. Fabrice, you were a big one, no, right? Yeah. Anyone?
No, he was.
Blinds are still 15,000, 30,000, and 5,000 ante, and they will be for the next 53 minutes or so.
Look at all those beautiful plaques on the table.
Yeah, if you're just joining us, the gray chips are 5,000. The red chips are 25K. The blue placards are 100K. The yellow placards are gold ones. Those are 500K.
Jean, I think in France, is yellow.
And it's raised
Jean?
by
Jean.
Adrian on 65.
Blue is easy. That's just bleu. You have to say it, with a little bit of
Fabrisco.
Frenchness.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
Summon up the saliva and really spit it out. A raise for Mateos. Fabrice calls. Flop is 6 high. Rainbow.
Of club and deuce of hearts.
Over 11 million chips in play. Mateos has more than half of them, or just about half.
Adrian bet 75.
I want to say it's about 50.5% probably.
Yes, he's in a good spot right now.
And it's called.
Yeah.
And he's earned the chips in a very good way as well. He's played a very cagey game here today.
Queen of diamond.
Yeah, hasn't really been a time where you could point out and be like, oh, that was a mistake,
Yeah. There are a few tiny adjustments that I might personally make, but they're so minuscule, and when I'm playing, I might make bigger errors in the other direction. Who knows? So I got to hand it off. Take my hat off for the 19-year-old from
Adrian
Spain.
bet 185.
And something we don't always see, Mateos here bets 185,000. After betting 75,000 on the flop, he bets 185, and he adds to his chip count. Something we don't always see, and something we certainly didn't see yesterday at the high roller final table when Daniel Negreanu took the short stack to the championship. Today, we see the top 3 stacks entering the final table are the top 3 stacks now, the only 3 players remaining.
No.
Adrian Mateos came to the final table with 3.7 million. Nietzsche came in with 2.3 million. Fabrice Soulier came in with 1.8 million. Nietzsche is pretty much exactly where he was at the start. Fabrice has added about 1.1 million to his starting stack. Mateos has added about 2.1 million to his starting stack. If you're just joining us, you missed fireworks early on. Benny Spindler came in, played 11 of the first 12 hands, and not a lot went his way, and he was gone 32 hands later in 6th place. Ravi Raghavan got it in with a straight flush, a royal straight flush draw against 2 pair. Hit an ace on the turn. That wasn't enough. The 3 of hearts on the river sealed his fate, and he was gone in 5th. And then in something that not many people would have seen, Jerome Huget, the amateur, the 38-year-old, pulled a stone-cold bluff with a pair of 3s.
Oh, yeah, he went for it.
He did go for it, and unfortunately for him, Fabrice Soulier had top 2 pair.
Right.
Well, not top 2, I should say ace-queen. He flopped top 2 pair. And Soulier makes the call, eliminating Jerome Huget, the satelliter, guy who satellited in for just 10 euros, gone in 4th place, and that's where we are now. 3-handed, McLean Carr, David Tuckman. We'll be here until we crown a champion.
And you got to hand it to Soulier for just calling with the ace-queen and giving Huget a chance to hang himself with the bluff, rather than maybe overplaying his really strong holding four-handed and just re-raising all in.
I mean, the interesting thing is that if he raises that turn, he gets all of Huget's bluffs out, and Huget's not going to go anywhere with king-queen, but Huget's also not going to go anywhere with Jack-10 or 3s.
Right, and so he's getting rid of all the hands that might bluff off the tournament, which includes, as we see, the 4-3 suited.
For a second, I thought maybe Huget could be bluffing, but I'm not going to say that I thought he was bluffing. But I thought if he was bluffing, he would have had Queen X of diamonds.
Yes, that might have been a more believable line, but as it was, he just was going with the bottom pair.
He was. He went for it. Nietzsche bets 155, and 8 high. Well, not much equity there, but
nope. But it's
2 overcards to Soulier's pair of 7s.
Tough board to continue with 7s when you're facing some aggression.
Might have stolen.
Dominic Nietzsche.
Oh, he lets a little smile about that one. He's happy he got away with one there.
It's hard to say if I don't know your hand, right?
It's pretty easy to say there that 8 high is usually not good. Dom,
Right.
getting a little cheeky.
Ok, non mais je sais en béton parce que
Well, I mean, and you saw the board there. I mean, ace 10, rag, you know, just it's one of those spots where when Dominic raises the flop, your opponent's either got it or he doesn't. You know, it's just.
Average
Yeah.
75.
And when your opponent doesn't have it, it's going to be really, really hard for him to
Right,
continue.
which is why these are good boards. That's why poker often favors the aggressor. The first person to put chips in the pot is oftentimes the person who ends up winning.
Raise from Fabrice. Mateos calls.
The flop is
A couple of queens out there.
club, queen of spades,
Queen,
hearts,
queen,
six of
rag.
diamond,
No suits.
3 and check.
We're going
Action
to
on
be
the
seeing a
Frenchman.
lot of flops going forward. They still have a lot of chips.
Well, these guys are very deep.
Oh, yeah.
Mateos is almost 200 big blinds deep. Fabrice is now about 90 big blinds deep, and so is Dominic Nietzsche. So we're talking about every pot is 90 big blinds effective deep.
They've got a lot of chips, yep. It's going to be fun to watch. We're going to have probably at some point some pretty big turn and river decisions that are going to determine who ends up with a victorious bracelet hoisted above their head in victory.
Two of these 3 players have won a bracelet before. Fabrice and Dominic. The 19-year-old Spaniard looking for his first ever one. It's amazing that he can win a bracelet here, yet not go to Las Vegas for at least a couple of years.
Yep, it's just a slightly different set of rules over in America, I guess, with the views of
about 2-8.
For the record, he actually can go to Las
gambling
Vegas.
and poker. And,
We let him
yeah.
land.
Well, right.
Just can't go to a casino. Fabrice shows it
Ah oui, oui,
deuce.
je vais compter mon chip. Je vais le faire.
And Nietzsche's going to take that one.
How many chips are in play?
11.
11. Okay.
I think it's kind of arbitrary sometimes how different laws are set at different ages. That we have all these laws where it just depends on when you reach a certain age, all of a sudden magically
Everybody,
we
everyone.
think that you're
knows
going
that.
to have the skills required or the knowledge required to responsibly handle this.
Hey.
And I guess over a large scale it works
I can
all
sit
right.
here all day.
But I don't know why they don't
That's what
attach
you want me to do? Sit here all day.
responsibilities or
Sunday.
social responsibilities to a level of education.
That's fine.
Like say, oh, you've graduated
camera
high
crew is not
school.
gonna like it.
Now you've earned the right to play poker, to drink, to vote, to do all these other things because we're attaching it to a level of education rather than just some arbitrary age.
That's an interesting point. It's an interesting point because I can tell you at the age of 28, I shouldn't have been trusted with the remote control. A little less drinking or anything like that. So I can see that. If you were to attach it to maturation, you could argue that I still wouldn't be mature enough.
And that would be probably better for society then if we had a 28-year-old who is not able to have this minimum competency of being able to complete whatever course. If they can't handle that responsibility, do we want them handling these other responsibilities?
I think a good topic, a very interesting topic for another day.
Well, yeah, sorry. I
It's
digress.
interesting. Digress away, it's okay.
One is called by Adrian.
Get to another
Fabrice
flop here.
Soulier raised to 60,000. Mateos calls.
And we have on the flop a 10 and
10 high flop, 2 clubs.
And a deuce of hearts.
Fabrice, the original raiser. Mateos calling from the blinds. And every time I say somebody calls, it's going to be from the blinds because we're 3 ways right now.
The turn
Well,
is
you
a
might
9
see
of
some people
diamond.
flatting buttons from an under, I mean flatting, I guess from either of the blinds, is what you're saying, yeah. I was thinking from more like the 3 bets they could flat. But
Somebody could limp in from the button,
yes,
get a fold from the small blind, and the big blind could just tap the table.
right, which is basically a call as well, I guess.
Yeah. Mateos bets 90,000 and went check on the flop. And Fabrice checked it back,
And Fabrice.
apparently because he wanted to call the turn bet, and he does. Pot now 330,000.
River is the 4 of clubs.
Well, front door clubs get there. What kind of hand is Mateos? I'm sorry. What kind of hand is Fabrice raising on the button with, checking back,
Action is on Adrian.
and then calling the turn? Like a 7, maybe?
Yeah, he might just be trying to get to a showdown
Okay.
with a hand that's flopped some equity. He could have.
Mateos just overbet the pot.
500,000.
What is
Yes.
that? I mean, is that polarized at this point?
It's totally polarized. He's either got there with a really huge hand, like maybe he got there with the flush or a straight even,
Jack 8 type hand.
right? Or he has probably some blockers to those hands,
Fabrice fold.
and it's just bluffing. But yeah,
And
we
he
see
did.
the flush.
He had the flush. And sure enough,
And we
Soulier,
see how he got there. You know, he had the pair and the flush draw. Pretty strong hand on the turn. You did say the 7th. He had a very strong 7.
well, it's just something that you notice when you play poker and you do a lot of commentary. You notice that when good players raise and they check back and then call, a lot of times they're checking back. The hands they're betting, it seems like, they're betting their monsters and they're betting their bluffs. And they're checking back a lot of their marginal holdings because they have showdown value.
Right.
So on the turn, it allows them to keep the pot small and to induce. So when the turn comes off a 9, he's going to call that with, I mean,
Dominic Brace is
with what was a second pair on the flop and third pair on the turn.
Right. Yeah, when you're playing deep like this, and especially with big pay jumps and experienced players, very often there's going to be a check on one of the 3 streets. And that's going to tell you a lot of information about what sort of hand they're holding. And I guess Mateos correctly assumed that
Action is back on Dominic.
that Fabrice had a piece of it, and he was trying to look a little bluffy and maybe got a little greedy, going for a lot of value there.
Right. Mateos 3 bets and Mateos takes it. I mean, if you put your opponent, I think when you're betting that large on the river, when you've effectively got the nuts, and even though Mateos didn't have the nuts, he essentially did.
Three-handed,
I think
yeah.
you've got to put your opponent on a hand, and like we said, I think Fabrice's likely holding was probably a pair of 7s, and it might be a little bit greedy
Right.
going for 500,000 chips.
But
when your
maybe
opponent
he
only has
rivers a
7.
2-pair and thinks it's
Yeah.
good enough to call. But even then, it's basically the same thing. You're playing it against, like you said, it's very polarized. You're playing against the flush, maybe the straight, or a missed hand. So 2-pair plays almost the same as a king 7 in that case.
I understand the theory behind checking back your marginal holdings. But when you do that against good players, aren't you capping your range? Doesn't that give your opponent a lot of information?
It does give your opponent a lot of information. And some people argue that you shouldn't maybe do the same thing always there, and you should merge, and maybe with a marginal holding short-handed, at times you should be making big bets, maybe even 50% or more of the pot, just to mix it up and make it harder for people to put you on hand so they can develop a strategy to play against you.
And it's also a situation if you're betting your marginal holdings on the flop as C-bets rather than checking them back, it protects your bluffs too.
Yes.
It allows you to bluff a little bit more. Dominic had a real hand there. He 3-bet with ace-queen and takes that one down. Mateos folds the king-4. How often, what percentage of your hands are you raising the button? And I'll throw for each player. If you're the chip leader and you've got 6 million chips, are you raising 100%?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
And the other 2 players?
The other 2 players, it goes down considerably, and it also depends on which one of them you are, because Fabrice's button, he's raising into the chip leader, so the chip leader is probably going to be defending a lot, and so maybe Fabrice should be only raising 85%, whereas Dominic could maybe raise a few more because he's playing against the other short stack out of the big blind.
A raise for Fabrice, and he's going to raise and take it. Virtual dead heat for second place. Fabrice and Dominic Nietzsche, really nothing in it. I think Fabrice has a slight chip lead, but
once again, all these players have chips. Any one of the shorter stacks doubles up either by taking out the other player, then we've got an even heads-up match, or if they double through Mateos, then they almost switch spots with him and end up being the massive chip leader against the equal stacks.
It was 75,000.
a lot of fun to watch this. There's so much post-flop play, and you just don't normally see this much post-flop play at a final table.
Yeah, it's great, and that's what's great about the World Series of Poker, especially with, well, particularly with their main events, that they have nice long levels, hour-and-a-half long levels, and a lot of play. And so you get to the final table, and there's still a lot of skill. There's a lot of decisions. There's a lot of poker to be played to determine who is the champion of this coveted bracelet. Whereas in other tournament events, maybe you don't have as many chips. You come to the final table. There's a lot less chip stacks in relation to the blinds, and then luck becomes a much larger factor because you just have to play more hands because there's more to be gained in the middle.
I'm a fan of Jack Effel's tournament structures. Even in the smaller tournaments, the $1,000, the $1,500 buy-ins, those, while there's not nearly as much play in the first few hours, when they start getting closer to the money, when they start getting near the final table and at the final table, there tends to be a lot more play.
Well, I think a little bit, not as much with the thousands. The thousands, I think you're pretty short stacked the whole way through, but that's also, it's a $1,000 tournament. If you want more chips, you have to play in the bigger tournament.
Also, we're getting through 3,000 people. It's a matter of, you want to play a 7-day, $1,000 tournament.
Well, and that's where you could argue to do a few other things. You could maybe make it only 8 max and less, and that makes the tournament go a lot faster, which is another way to get players through. You could also give players more chips to begin with, but then start at a higher blind rate and also with antes, and that would make the tournament go a lot faster. And I think that those are maybe some things that you could see down the road experimenting with. It's happened somewhat in some other tours as well. I, as a player, personally would like to see that happen.
I think that would favor, that would probably favor players like you, though. I mean, obviously, there are more antes, and I think that would favor you and probably be a disadvantage for the amateurs.
But then again, they do so many other things for the amateurs that they're flat. They've flattened the payout structures a lot, which helps a lot more people make the money, which keeps a lot more money in the amateurs' pockets. They get the cash more often. But I think it would be good for poker in general, and I think it would be more fun for both the amateurs and the pros if they stayed away from playing the 10-handed.
Got a check raise here for Mateos. I can get behind that. I'm not a big fan of the 10-handed play. Fabrice was the original raiser. Mateos called. Mateos check raises this ace, 5, deuce, 2-club board. Action on the Frenchman.
Which is interesting because in this case, Mateos, because he didn't raise pre-flop, he probably doesn't have a super strong ace. So he's representing sort of a hand that might be a 2-pair, a combo draw, maybe even a straight.
And the turn is the Queen of Diamonds.
Queen of Diamonds.
Action is on Adrian.
And now Mateos is going to check.
See him slow down a little bit.
So he check raises the flop. And he checks the turn. Action on Fabrice.
And I would think Fabrice would probably be checking most turns here. He doesn't want to give up the equity of his hand, and he didn't go for the re-raise on the flop unless he was slow playing a really big monster. I would expect him to bet here to have a really strong hand that he's probably not wanting to get away from in the face of a raise.
Well, he's going to bet, and it's actually
bets 180.
Not a huge bet, 180,000, about 1/3 of the pot.
So when it's a small bet like this, sometimes a player is trying to slow down the river action, and he's trying to take the lead to maybe be able to check back on the river and not have to call a big bet on a lot of scare cards.
What kind of hand do we think Fabrice has here? I mean, is it like an ace 7-ish?
I think that's possible.
And Adrian.
And it turns out he's got. Wow, he's the one who had the huge draw.
Yeah.
And Mateos really just had a gut shot. He was just taking a shot at it. Fabrice had an enormous
but Fabrice
draw.
did have a hand that could take some heat there. So once again, he was only putting the chips in with a hand where facing a raise, he's most likely to call and be able to see in position if he gets there or not and play profitably on the river.
And also, I'm also betting a hand there that couldn't win at showdown.
Right.
He can't win with 6 high. He's got to bet.
Right.
65,000.
Dominic bet 65 on the bottom.
Well, Fabrice back up to just under 3 million. Mateos under 6 million again. He's at 5.7.
By Adrian on a small.
Nietzsche raising. Mateos calls. Mateos called in the small blind. We don't see that we don't see that very often.
But we'll probably see it a little bit more as he's trying to just get involved with these shorter stacks and get to a lot of flops and just hope that he can outmuscle them and keep whittling them down.
Fabrice calls as well. And it's funny, people that are just tuning in that are hearing shorter stacks, they're not short, though, by any stretch.
Right, just relatively.
Right. The blinds are 15-30. Dominic is our shortest stack, and he has over 80 big blinds.
Fabrice bet
85,000.
85. Dominic fold.
These two again.
Fabrice bets 85,000 into about 210.
Mateos is going for the raise. Upstairs, he says.
230,000.
Mateos looks like he's really starting to dial up the aggression and trying to really put the other players to the test in a lot of pots.
Yeah, it's been unfortunate that, you know, Fabrice actually has had some hands. I mean, last hand 6-3 of clubs.
Well,
He's got a gut shot with
depending
the
on your perspective, I mean, for Fabrice fans, you know, wearing scarves in the audience, they might say it's fortunate.
No, I mean, I was saying Mateos has gotten a little unfortunate.
Absolutely.
And Fabrice is going to call. Pot now 670,000 chips. Turn to 3.
Of diamond.
If 6-3 would be another good hand, by the way.
Yeah, and
That would be good to have.
Fabrice, it's tough to get Fabrice to fold. He's not a guy who likes to give up.
He likes to sleep he likes to sleep well at night.
Yeah,
and I think Mateos knows that, and I think this is for value now.
Adrian bet 325.
Or he at least has a stronger draw than last time.
Yeah.
But that 3 doesn't change a whole lot of what was going on the flop. Fabrice knows his pot's getting big. He's got to decide. He's been chipping up nicely here. Does he want to just keep his lead, or is he going to keep?
He makes the call. His pot
Okay.
is now 1.32 million chips, and this is one of the bigger pots we've seen all day.
This is a very pivotal pot.
Mateos out of position, and if a blank comes off, to see what happens. That's certainly not a blank.
No,
Clubs
it's
get
not.
there.
So now, if Mateos was semi-bluffing with the clubs, he is very strong now.
Is this card? And he's going to check. I was about to ask you which. Who does it favor?
So, yeah,
And
Mateos with the better 2-pair, yeah.
And 6.
That's good.
and if the club doesn't come, you wonder what Mateos bets the river.
Yeah, I mean, he probably gives it a pretty hefty sizing. He was pretty confident that his 2-pair was better, and he was right. And Mateos has actually been running pretty well against Soulier, to be fair. They've had a number of big pots today where Fabrice has gone in, dominating Mateo, and Mateo has gotten better flops. There was one time when he was dominating Mateo, Mateo outplayed him with the 4-3 against his ace-4. But, ooh, I love this graphic. It's been too long.
Let's take a look at it here. And Mateos now with well over half the chips in play. Fabrice Soulier, Dominic Nietzsche, just about even. And that is their seat positions as well. As we continue on with the 7th Annual World Series of Poker Europe main event. There's a look at the 19-year-old Spaniard.
And Dominic
Getting good value out of his hand and extending his lead and just pitting these two other guys against each other, hopefully trying to make them play for second place.
Flop 6 and 8 of club, ace of spade.
75,000.
Mateos bet 75,000 and a quick fold from Fabrice.
Mateo started the day playing so few hands, but now that it's gotten short-handed, a few things have gone his way, he is really going after every pot.
Of course, yeah.
I think there are many ways to skin a cat and many ways to win a tournament. One thing that I've seen numerous times is the chip leader or somebody who's top 2 or 3 chips really kind of lay low for the first 15 or 20 hands, see how it's going to go, and then strike, and that's what Mateos has done. I saw Galen Hall do it when I covered the PCA a couple of years ago.
Okay.
I saw Jonathan Taylor do it this summer at the World Series of Poker. We've seen players do that, and
And it's called by Adrian.
I can see two sides to the coin, because I do think at the start of the final table, it's a great time, because other players are trying to kind of just like get their bearings. I think it is a great time to become the power broker, to take control, to dominate, like
The Benny Spindler school.
Exactly, like Benny Spindler did. But on the other side, I think that there's a lot to be said for, you know, you can't win the tournament in the first 30 minutes. Just let's settle in. Let's see what's going on.
Right.
And I've seen both sides win.
See some of the dynamics and maybe adjust and try to come up with a strategy that's going to fit well with the current dynamic.
I think at the end of the day, what you said was key. Was don't go in with a plan. Adapt and adjust and take what your opponents are giving you.
Right.
If you're sitting down with, you know, at an 8-handed final table and 7 players are all sitting there going, okay, I don't want to lose the first 20 minutes. Let me just get my bearings. Well, hey, take what they give you. Then you can be aggressive.
Right.
But if you're sitting down at a table with Dominic Nietzsche and Benny Spindler, then maybe it's best to sit back and let them spew some chips off.
And obviously, going in without a set plan doesn't mean to go in unprepared. Still, you know, spend your time. Get to know about some of your opponents when you're at a big final table. Learn about some tendencies.
I don't know how to play against this guy.
And the French crowd goes crazy because Fabrice just won 100,000.
Yeah, but he is the local man in the fight. I mean, he's sporting the French flag. He's got to be the fan favorite.
Let's wait for someone to make a huge mistake, right?
Yeah.
Someone's going to get tired.
Well, after the High Roller event was won by a Canadian, I'm sure, and last year, Phil Hellmuth won the World Series of Poker Europe main event. The French would love nothing more than to keep the...
Well, they've had Roger. He's been steady for them.
He has, but I think they want to keep the main event here.
75.
Mateos raising.
I want to see a Latin American series of bracelets. Poker is getting so big there, and I want an excuse to go down to Brazil or Punta del Este, Uruguay, and play down there.
I can tell you wholeheartedly that it wouldn't surprise me at all. First of all, if that was in the cards at some point, pun intended, and if it ended up being in the cards, I would definitely be there with you. I spent about 6 weeks in South America a couple of years ago and absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I've never been. I've been so many places in the world now thanks to poker, but I've been kind of saving South America for whatever reason. I've always had kind of a love affair for a lot of the...
Mateos had raised here. Fabrice Soulier 3-bet. Mateos called. Flop is jack high. Rainbow. Mateos checks. Fabrice Soulier. Small little bet. That's a tiny bet.
And Fabrice bet 95.
Yep.
He bets about 25% of the pot.
And it's enough to take it down.
But yeah, I was lucky enough, fortunate enough to I had some work in Buenos Aires for about 10 days, and decided to take that opportunity to spend the next 5 weeks after that in traveling around South America, and it was fantastic. Highly recommend it to anybody.
Well, there we go. We need to have World Series of
since
Poker
we were talking about food,
yes, there
I
you
will
go.
tell you, steak and wine in Argentina.
Yeah, Mendoza, the Pampa.
Oh, Mendoza, the wine?
Yeah.
The wine in Mendoza was ridiculous, but the steak, when I was in Buenos Aires, if you're a vegan, my apologies, but steak and wine in Buenos Aires, it was just to die for. It was outrageously good. Mateos raising on the button, and he's going to take it.
Speaking of gauchos, taking down another pot.